And then, turning to the crowd and playing the school fight song as you march towards the crowd, she writes, I stood at the center of the age with so much pride and joy. Someone else wrote, Frank taught me as a teacher that expecting something from others was a good thing. He modeled me in how to bring the best out of others, and it's probably one of my greatest assets, this gentleman writes. Where I think many teachers fail today is in not expecting excellence from their students. My life benefited because he was that way with me. Someone else wrote, I learned to always push myself to do the best and then surpass that. Another classmate wrote, for me, it was not one particular moment or memory, it was the extreme search for perfection. The discipline, the psychology, the musicianship, and the coolness factor. Frank was cool in the eyes of athletes and teachers, and it changed our status as band members. In regards to pre-dawn marching band practices, one former student who dropped out of band wrote, life is too short to be yelled at in the cold before daylight. That's okay, she went on to win a candidate, but it was something else, so she's done just fine. Many more memories were shared with me of band trips, sound equipment, band uniforms, the Shakos, cleaning those in oatmeal, the private Christmas parade march to the Ross household, the smell of spit valves and brasso and bean dip in the band house. A few Frank Ross quotes were shared with me, like, do you want my size 12 shoe up your back? And another one, my favorite, there is only one excuse for missing rehearsal, a death in the family, yours. For me personally, a profound impact Frank Ross had on my life began somewhere on the journey between being a terrified 9th grader, trying to learn how to step off that perfect 22.5-inch step on the football field while carrying a bass drum, to playing a few hot licks on an electric upright bass for our final stage band concert my senior year. I sum up that journey from one to the other like this: discipline, technique, execution, precision. These provided the base upon which you could then add artistry, improvisation, creativity, and more than just a little musical anarchy. I'll explain. You remember that movie in I think it was 1998, a black and white movie that was called Pleasantville, where the residents of a 1950s black and white town began to feel feelings, and they were liberated from the things that were oppressing them. They and the world, as they began to feel these feelings, they and the world around them would begin to be seen in full color. A character would be seen in color. They'd walk into a room and suddenly it being in color. Well, as color was revealed in this movie, it was no coincidence that the director chose to use a music soundtrack at that moment when color was revealed of the 5/4 beat of Dave Brubeck's classic Take 5. I remember Frank Ross trying to teach me 5/4. It was a completely foreign language to a guy who thought that God intended all music to be 4 beats to the measure, sung a cappella, and delivered on the page in shaped notes from the Sacred Hymns songbook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. What is this? This is not John Phillips's song. Certainly no good can come of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Discipline, technique, execution, precision, the base upon which you can then layer artistry, improvisation, creativity, and a little musical anarchy. At the start of our senior year, when the cheerleaders at our all-white school went away to cheerleading camp, and they began mixing it up with black cheerleaders in high schools in exotic places like Tulsa and Oklahoma City. They came back to Miami, Oklahoma in the fall of 1971 with a few new cheerleaders. shirts that did not sound like 2 bits, 4 bits, 6 bits, a dollar. Suddenly they were singing, cheep, cheep, bang, bang. Got to get my boom on that. Got to roar. That was all the best. And the drum rang, and the band was sitting there going, oh my gosh, what is this? And so suddenly, instead of rat-a-tat, 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 crash, boom, we started going, and everybody, all of a sudden, the kids, man, kids were staying and started, all these white kids started moving their body, and they did not know what they were doing. And Frank would shoot us a look, and you go, oh, you're in such trouble. But it was at that moment that black and white became full color. You know? Suddenly, our foundation of a military-style discipline and the precision of musical technique was augmented, liberated, unleashed by rhythm and soul and jazz, improvisational licks, playing 5 beats to the measure instead of 4, as the kids say today, OMG. Frank Ross loved that. I believe at that time jazz and soulful music were Mr. Military's secret anti-establishment guilty pleasure. When we busted some moves with a new beat in a football stadium, he would grin, a little worried perhaps that the next day he'd be talked to by the principal. But he always took some comfort in knowing to be able to tell the principal that at least all the guys in the band still had their hair trimmed above their ears. And we'd take on new charts in the stage band and mix it up with the classics like Woodchopper's Law and In the Mood. Frank would take us to concerts and contests and clinics with artists who were made, like the one with amazing trumpeter Bill Chase. Remember the band Chase? Sometimes when we play, he would pick up that silver trumpet and join in with us using his considerable chops to ratchet up our own musical excellence. He was more than a teacher and a discipliner. Frank Ross was an artist and a guide to what was possible. Given you have the basics down, the world needs more teachers like you. Our loss, heaven's gain. Bill Chase, Frank Ross, Gabriel. Don't you really want to be up there for those auditions for first chair trumpet? My money was on Frank. My senior year in high school was a time when every high school jazz band in America would carve out a time on the concert program for a talented kid, David, to sit at the piano and start playing. Da, 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 while the prettiest little girl in the school, Terry, would come in with a flute, and some lanky kid with a full head of hair then would start to grab the microphone and channel his best Terry Cat or Peter Cetera or somebody and start singing, as time goes on, I realize just what you mean to me to color my world. So it wasn't just me though. Randall White, Rando, bass drum player, electric upright bass player, and not so good oboist. But so many students here. I'd like to ask all those former students of Frank Ross to stand up. All my classmates, everybody else who once was a band student with Frank Ross, please stand up and just stay with me for a second. From Frank Ross, these and thousands of other students learned how to be better musicians, better lovers of music, particularly scandalous jazz. Many also went on to become teachers. Many of us, if unleashed on a football field today, could still execute a perfect 22.5-inch step. Discipline, technique, execution, precision, artistry, improvisation, creativity, a little anarchy, and a whole lot of cool. That's what he was about. That's what we're about. And it turns out those lessons were not just about music. Those were lessons for life. Thank you to Frank's family for sharing him with us. And thank you, Frank Ross, for coloring our world